the first trial container ship from Kolkata carrying cargo meant for Agartala that reached the city via the Chattogram port. India and Bangladesh have enhanced cooperation in shipping and inland water trade in the recent past. Under the Protocol on Inland Water Transit and Trade, in addition to the 6 existing ports of call, 5 more in each country have been added recently. A port of call is a place where a ship stops during a voyage to enable the loading and unloading of cargo. In this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the Indo-Bangladesh connectivity and economic partnership. Joining me on the program today are Veena Sikri, former ambassador, Harshvi Pant, Head Strategic Studies, Observer Research Foundation, and Alok Bansal, Director, India Foundation. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Ambassador, I'd like to begin the program with you. What are your thoughts on this significant milestone in the Indo-Bangladesh connectivity and economic partnership?
Well, I think it is indeed a very major milestone that has been achieved. But let's look back. Actually, all of this was reversed in the year 1965 during the Indo-Pak War. And we are now, after more than 50 years, after more than 5 decades, thanks to the cooperation of the Bangladesh government, strongly led by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, we have now reached that level where we now again are doing our transshipment through Bangladesh. And I think this is a very important milestone because it shows the implementation, the will to do it, the goodwill, the decisions, and a lot of agreements have been signed. But now we've actually seen the implementation. And that is why I think this shows that it can be done. Earlier, we had one oversized transportation for the Palatana power plant, which went through. But I think this is very significant to note that the focus on implementation, on deciding and then doing things. And I think that this is a culmination of a lot of positive factors in India-Bangladesh relations that have been happening in the last few years. Let's just look at, say, 2019, last year. It was a remarkable year in terms of implementation of agreed decisions. We had, for example, in March 2019, Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, by video conferencing, they actually inaugurated several projects which had been in the pipeline, where India is doing these small development projects for the people of Bangladesh. You know, these included 11 water treatment plants, it included 36 community clinics, and it included cooperation between institutions of India and Bangladesh in professional skill development and training of people, human resource development. We also had the visit by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina of Bangladesh. She came here in October last year. The President of Bangladesh was here for the inauguration of Prime Minister Modi's second term earlier in May last year. And we've had a number of visits. The External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, was in Dhaka in August of last year. And we had our we had an Environment Minister who was there, who visited. Dr. Prakash Javadekar also was there. So this has been really such an active and dynamic relationship. And this has gone beyond the normal of just education and health and tourism. We're now cooperating in nuclear science. We're cooperating in space and information technology. We are setting up 500 schools of Bangladesh. We're setting up computer labs and language labs. So I think that this focus on actually reaching out to the people and showing the results on the ground where everybody can feel it is tremendous. Now this transshipment that has been achieved, it's really a very strong win-win situation because it's a collaboration between logistics companies of India and Bangladesh. The ships may belong to Bangladesh, the transportation will be through Bangladesh. It went to Chittagong port, the ship went to Chittagong port carrying containers of lentils and steel rods, and then it was transported onto a truck which went to Akhora. And from there, it went through the Akhora-Agartala rail link and road link. It went to Tripura. But there are other such communication channels and transshipment channels that are being developed through Mongla port, for example. And Mongla port from Kolkata port is just a day's transshipment. And then through Mongla port, it can go right up the riverway to Zakiganj in Assam, across the Assam border. So there is a very traditional millennia-old water transportation network that has existed in this part of the world, which fell into disuse after 1965. And now this beginning of the restoration signifies great cooperation between the corporate sector, the people-to-people sector, the trade sector, and the bilateral relationship between India and Bangladesh, notching up another strong victory.
Absolutely. All right. So, Captain Bansal, let me bring you in here now. So, access to ports in Bangladesh is critical, really, to opening shorter and alternate routes to connect the northeast region. So, it's a win-win situation, like the ambassador put it, isn't it? Because it's significant from our perspective as well, because it cuts short the travel distance from Kolkata to Agartala from 1,600 kilometers by 1/4 to around 450 kilometers.
Undoubtedly, I think it's a very, very big achievement, and we need to look at it into a historical concept. In fact, till 65, we could easily go through Bangladeshi territory to northeast. It's only after 65 war that all these roads were blocked, all these pathways which passed through Bangladesh were blocked. There were 7 railway lines which were going into Bangladesh at that point of time, functioning railway lines. But it has taken us such a long period to get back to normal. Today, fortunately, we have not revived 6 out of 7 railway lines. We have added 2 more. And I think these ports, access to all these ports will make northeastern states of India get supplies from India at a far lesser cost and far lesser time than was hitherto possible. And I think this is where it's very, very significant. Mongla port, Ambassador Veena Sikri talked about, which is a riverine port, is of course closer to Kolkata, but while transshipping cargo, Chittagong is of course a bigger port, and I think I'm looking for a day when it can be carried from Chittagong port by train all the way to Agartala, because railway links are being established that would improve the connectivity. And if we see last 6-7 years, as far as India-Bangladesh relations are concerned, we have taken India-Bangladesh relations to a new high, possibly to the level which existed between 71 to 75. Not only inland waterways are being worked out, we are working on railways. Of course, the day Calcutta, Dhaka, Agartala bus service was inaugurated, transit was virtually granted, because you could travel from Calcutta to Agartala via Dhaka, which was virtually transit without saying so. We are actually now exporting electricity to Dhaka from our northeastern grid, from Agartala and places, and Bangladesh is providing us the bandwidth. I think there are many private sector players in India who are also getting involved with Bangladesh. Of course, Adani is claiming to produce its electricity from Jharkhand and supplying it to Bangladesh. But one of the big important landmarks would be this big power project which is coming up in Bangladesh, being built by Reliance Power. In fact, another factor which has come up is that the dedicated export zones for India, which Bangladesh has given up. So I think India-Bangladesh relations are moving to a very, very new high, and we need to look at it more carefully, because in the recent past we had that aberration where there was, of course, a telephone communication between Prime Minister of Pakistan and Prime Minister of Bangladesh, which many in Pakistan tried to blow it up, saying that restoration of good diplomatic relations between Pakistan and Bangladesh. But we need to understand that as far as India and Bangladesh relations are concerned, we are too close. We have virtually eliminated all the pending irritants that were there in our relations. I think land boundary agreement was, of course, one big thing, but acceptance of permanent tribunals award on maritime boundary delineation was another. There have been numerous issues. I think now probably the Tista waters is the only pending issue, and which is, I think, just a matter of time, because whatever has been agreed, that level of water is being allowed to go to Bangladesh, and that has been going. The only thing is the agreement has not been inked because of internal political dynamics which exist in India. But we need to understand that all these good relations between India and Bangladesh are incumbent upon the current regime in Bangladesh sustaining, and Sheikh Hasina's staying in power. And that is, I think, a big vulnerability from my point of view, I think, as far as India-Bangladesh relations are concerned.
Okay, all right. Coming back to the, to the connectivity and economic partnership, Professor Harshvi Pant, this is not just beneficial for us, it is also helpful for Bangladesh's economy as well, isn't it?
Yes, I think it's largely an issue where, when we are looking at the next stage of economic recovery for India, when we are looking at the next stage of economic recovery for Bangladesh, it makes perfect sense to have the kind of connectivity. And I think that, as Ambassador was mentioning, the fact that it is now implemented on the ground, we see the results of this. That is, I think, very, very important, because for a long time, the argument has been that implementation has not been done, that we had these ideas, but they are not being operationalized. And I think now that we see that operationalization of some of these, meta projects, and connectivity is one area where India has been seen as particularly vulnerable, given that our relationship with our neighbors. India has not been able to generate that level of connectivity with our neighbors, which is something that India needed to work on. And now that we are seeing the results, I think that will generate confidence in other neighbors as well, that we can deliver it, and we can produce results on the ground. So I think when you're looking at a post-pandemic recovery, when you're looking at the economic problems that India and Bangladesh both are facing, these kind of projects allow us to envision a future where both can partake in an economic recovery faster, and which is more sustainable, because that is grounded in the realities of the region. So Northeast and Bangladesh getting interconnected through various natural means, is geographical connectivity, the land, water, inland waterways, etc. That means that is something organic about the region's economic growth that is going to be in the future. So I think that is where the potential for the regional regeneration lies. The northeastern regeneration, Bangladesh's engagement with that region, and India's larger economic paradigm, where Northeast becomes mainstream in India's economic imagination. And I think these are very, very important initiatives in those contexts. And as I think both Mr. Bansal and ambassadors have pointed out, this is a larger part of this India-Bangladesh engagement today, where we are looking at each other's economic prosperity as beneficial for each other. It's not simply that we are rising, so what it has to do with the other side. And I think the fact that this could happen at a time when the world is still, trying to face the realities of COVID-19 and what will happen post COVID-19. I think these are very important. These are important markers in that sense for both India and Bangladesh. And my sense is that this generates enormous confidence in Bangladesh, in India, and India's Northeast, that things that were only thought about in the past could now be done, could now be operationalized, and we could take our economic recovery to a level where perhaps as we come to terms with our with the trials and tribulations of a post-COVID era, there is something organic about the region's growth that could happen, and both I think could not have happened without the kind of leaderships that we have had in the two countries, and the kind of economic and other engagements which I think have already been pointed out that have happened over the last few years. The kind of confidence that it has generated, that the two countries could work together on critical issues that have been in dispute for long, but now they are being settled one by one. The fact that the two leaderships are more in sync with each other than they have ever been in the past, and the fact that the bureaucratic arrangements in both countries are looking towards practical, action-oriented, problem-solving issues, rather than just talking in generics. So I think that is a substantive achievement, and I think this particular inland connectivity project that you mentioned is something that will, I think, generate greater confidence to do other things in other areas as well.
Absolutely. Okay, all right. So widening the scope of the discussion a little bit, Ambassador, what impetus does this give sub-regional cooperation, for instance, the BBIN grouping and others?
No, I think this is a great signal and a great boost to BBIN cooperation, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Nepal, and also BIMSTEC cooperation. And the BIMSTEC cooperation, as you know, the Secretariat is located in Dhaka, and we are hoping that there will be a summit meeting again, maybe next year. So this gives a tremendous boost, because the reality of this move that has happened, this transshipment, is that Nepal and Bhutan can participate in it fully. So if the transshipment from Calcutta to Chittagong and then up there can actually directly benefit Nepal and Bhutan. Actually, the other route via Mongla that I spoke about earlier, the riverine transport, that is even of more direct benefit, because it goes closer to Nepal and Bhutan, and also it can go directly without transshipment to trucks. So the positive environmental impact of this, what has happened for India, for the entire region is tremendous. Because if you were going to use the 1600 kilometers as you spoke about, then imagine the amount of trucks, the amount of pollution, the amount of difficulty that would be there, the use of the roads. But now by using the river route, which is almost, environmental impact is very low, and then using the trucks for a little bit is very good. Now, if we do this for Bhutan and Nepal, we are already doing it with Bhutan and Nepal in the case of power. Nepal, we are, using Nepal also, and Bhutan also, they want to be part of the power grid between India, Nepal, Bangladesh and Bhutan. This is very positive. So even transshipment can benefit them. And then the transport of their goods. They can use these routes instead of, again, using all the trucks and the roads through India. So I think that this will give a very big boost to the BBI and BIMSTEC. There is always the motor vehicles agreement that we have been talking about for a long time, and maybe Bhutan is now willing to have another meeting. So maybe when the meetings go on, the BBI and motor vehicles agreement will also come into force. I think the sector of power that Dr. Alok Bansal had mentioned, this is very significant because this again is another direct people-to-people aspect which will benefit Nepal and Bhutan and India and India's northeast. When we talk of benefiting India's northeast, we have to look at the fact that even for Bangladesh traders, Bangladesh manufacturers, not only is India getting access to the northeast, but Bangladesh corporate sector is also getting access to the northeast. So they are also getting access to a new market, a very big new market. Some of it they're already using in terms of access, in terms of food processed products and all that. But I think this regularization of the transshipment methodology will mean that they too, the corporate sector in Bangladesh, will get a huge new market opened up in the northeast. And if you look beyond that, maybe even in Myanmar. So I think that this regional impact of this streamlining the transshipment is very valuable. And I think that these kind of measures are in many ways irreversible. Dr. Alok Bansal spoke about, the question of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and so on. But the point is, if you show the advantage of these kind of measures to the common man, that this is what development and prosperity is all about, then that makes it real. We do know that, for example, when Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina came back to power in 2009 for her second term, the power shortage was a huge crisis in the economy. And they had a tremendous difficulty, but because Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was determined to focus on economic development for Bangladesh and economic growth of Bangladesh, and she wanted to show the results, so she focused on the power sector. Without that, the economy could not have progressed. So they tried all kinds of, they even tried, these riverine power plants, which were very, very expensive and very polluting. But now this power trade, the power exchange between India and Bangladesh through Khulna, for example, in southwest Bangladesh, has really opened up that economy.
Sure.
Students can read at night, study their books at night, industries can work, factories can work, all kinds of agricultural energy using products can be used. It has been a tremendous boost. So it has shown to the people of Bangladesh what the positive factor in this cooperation between India and Bangladesh is. And now with adding Nepal and Bhutan, it's added the sub-regional cooperation aspect.
Absolutely. All right. So Captain Bansal, let me go back to a point that you are making in your opening remarks. While we've seen some major issues with our other neighbors, but that's not the case with Bangladesh. This is something that you spoke about as well. That doesn't mean that we do not have any irritants. There are irritants, but we seem to be sorting them out very easily.
Undoubtedly, I think India-Bangladesh relations are actually a result of resolving these irritants, some of which could have been extremely vexed, like maritime boundary dispute. I think the decision that we will go for arbitration and accepting the Permanent Court of Arbitration's award without any appeal or any comment was, I think, a brilliant move, because any bilateral arrangement would have reached to the same result, would have been criticized by one political actor or the other, saying that there has been certain appeasement by either in India or in Bangladesh. But once a third party gives a decision, that's been accepted in toto. What is even more important, and I think what is very, very important for stability of India-Bangladesh relations, as Ambassador Veena Sikri said, that a common man in Bangladesh must start deriving benefit out of this relationship. And that's what is being done. This transmission of power, bandwidth being supplied. And now when the transit starts in full flow, when trains, when ships start moving, and Bangladesh starts earning huge revenues by these goods that are transported, I think their stakes will rise. Another step will be when we take it to a sub-regional or a regional level. Then it will be even more stable, because you talked of BBIN. I think establishing a common grid between Bhutan, Eastern India and Bangladesh, of course, is given. Nepal also wants to join in. That can be taken it up. And once this sort of an arrangement stabilizes, because Bangladesh is keen on importing power from Nepal and Bhutan through Indian territory, and is willing to allow Indian power to go from northeastern India to rest of India. So I think interlinkages can be established. But of course, when we take it further east as part of BIMSTEC, that will be a real game changer. To my mind, when Myanmar gets integrated with this connectivity, then we will see a phenomenal change, because then a huge market of Southeast Asia also gets opened up, and then we can go in for big economies of scale. But I think it is pragmatic leadership in India and Bangladesh that has actually led to various resolutions of long pending irritants, like land boundary agreement. It was actually historical agreement which had been pending for close to 7 decades, and it was resolved in one go, without going into the nitty-gritties. So those are the things, that is where I think we need pragmatic leadership, which has actually shown us the way and which has brought the two countries together.
All right. So, Professor Harshvi Pant, as far as this issue of political irritants is concerned that Captain Bansal just raised, should we just dismiss it as, a small irritant, or how big an issue it is really as far as the bilateral relationship between the two countries are concerned?
Well, so long as the leaderships in the two countries were at loggerheads, it was very difficult to move forward on most of these issues. And I think what we have seen is what responsible leadership can do, and how big a change it can make in a relationship. Because we knew about these problems were long pending, but somehow, because of political dynamic either in India or in Bangladesh, for one reason or the other, it was unable to move forward in a direction that perhaps was needed. Because as we can see, once we have moved beyond those disputes, the results have been coming in swift and fast. And we have been scaling up those results in a very big way. So clearly they were important to be resolved. And even today you hear, for example, at times when you have these conferences or engagements about Tisa River dispute, it keep on appearing on the agenda. Although if you look at it in terms of the larger matrix, that is seemingly a problem, but it has not derailed the relationship. In fact, the relationship has moved forward, as we have been discussing, by leaps and bounds in the last 5 to 6 years. So what we are looking at is an arrangement whereby the two nations can appropriate each other's developmental prospects, become a part of that, and also make sure that those irritants remain a minor aspect of the relationship, do not consume the relationship, as seems to have happened in some of the other relationships. And I think this is what good leadership does, and this is what good leadership has done in the case of India and Bangladesh, that we have been able to keep the irritants as a minor footnote. We have been able to keep them where they actually belong, and we have been able to move the relationship forward in a very, very positive direction, whether it is problem solving, whether it is developing economic ties which have been growing, or whether it has been trying to sort of look to the future. The future of economic globalization, regional engagement is in connectivity. So unless we get our connectivity projects right, we will not be able to partake in the next stage of globalization, in the next phase of economic recovery. And I think that's precisely where it is very timely that such initiatives have come, and very timely that such initiatives are being looked at in a major way. And I think the larger matrix of the relationship looks very positive. The political relationship looks very positive, despite some of the minor issues. But I think the concerted effort on both sides should be to keep it the way it is, and not to let some either vested interests or to let other irritants become the focal point of this engagement, and therefore to develop, and I think, as has been discussed, to develop projects that benefit ordinary individuals, both in Bangladesh as well as in India's northeast. When we are talking of northeast, then if you have people in the northeast start looking at Bangladesh as a country from where they are deriving benefits, with the engagement with which is producing results on the ground. And similarly, Bangladesh looks at India's Northeast as a major player in their scheme of things. I think we will be on the safer ground, and we have been, and therefore what we have seen over the last few years is a very, very positive engagement in those aspects. The question would be that strategic picture, that strategic mapping should not be lost sight of while we are dealing with minor irritants.
Absolutely. Okay.
Can I add to that? Can I add a point here?
Yeah, please.
I'd like to add a point here. I think that what Mr. Pant said is quite right, and we have to keep the big picture in mind. But we have to also recognize that there are pressures at work within Bangladesh. There are both the Pakistanis and the Chinese. They are exerting their full pressure within Bangladesh to change the situation. And they are working through their own vested interests. Some of these vested interests may even be within the Awami League party. So we have to recognize that. But as I said, again, as Professor Pant has reinforced, and so has Captain Bansal, the fact is that what is the popular feeling in Bangladesh about peace? This is vital. This has to be stronger and stronger, and has to be in the right direction to know that what we are doing is to the benefit of the people of Bangladesh, and neither Pakistan nor China can ever replicate this or do what India can do for the people of Bangladesh. So this is a very important, it's a very strategic aspect, and we have to understand the forces at play. There are forces at play. There are people who are wanting to take it in a different direction. But I'm sure that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, with her strong legacy of keeping the interests of the people of Bangladesh in mind, of nationalism, of the legacy of the liberation war, she is quite determined to take it in this direction and maintain the good relations with India.
Okay, all right. I've got about a minute left on the program, so 30 seconds each. Captain Bansal and Professor Rashmi Pant. Captain Bansal, starting first with you. How do we scale up our already robust ties?
I think we need to expedite some of these projects which are going. Of course, one is the Akhora-Agartala link, rail link, which is important because I have always believed that when goods start getting transmitted by railways, it's always preferable over roadways, because roadways, accidents, road conditions, a lot of issues come into play. Railways is always better. Of course, ships are, of course, taking it, but from ship you have to unload it to road. It will be better if they start traveling by rail, and that will be one. Second is, of course, this power project, which will be the largest power project probably in Bangladesh, and of course, largest Indian overseas power project outside. It should be expedited. I think it's not been moving as fast as it should. I think these are some of the issues, and I think frequent interactions, and as I said, promotion of Bangladesh for Indian tourists is also equally important. When all these things come up, I think people will start seeing the advantage of good relations with India. And as Ambassador Veena Sikri said, I fully agree with her that China and Pakistan cannot provide to Bangladesh what India can give it. And I think that realization needs to dawn on a common man, and that will have its own political implications.
All right, and Professor Pant, close the show for us with a quick concluding remark.
Well, I think we need to continue the momentum. We need to complete the projects that are in the pipeline, and also to continue to underscore the difference between Indian involvement in Bangladesh and so-called Chinese involvement, because China will never be able to do what India can provide. The kind of people-to-people engagement and the kind of capacity-building approach that India has, China's unilateral top-down model does not really work. It has not worked in other countries. It will not work for Bangladesh, despite some of the numbers that are often talked about. And I think that important point by pursuing projects that benefit ordinary Bangladeshis, that benefit Bangladesh's developmental prospects, will go a long way in removing even some of the smaller irritants that are there in the relationship at the moment.
Okay, all right. Then on that note, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that the Indo-Bangladesh bilateral relationship is in a good place and has scaled new heights. The transshipment partnership is a positive development in the right direction.